this idea of progress, that time is linear, and most mankind are destined to travel from savagery to civilization. But there are always those who are slower or who stop developing at a particular stage. And the Europeans believe that our civilization, European civilization, has always been advancing and is now the most advanced. They are very self-centered, right? That's Eurocentrism, Europe's self-centered idea. While we can bring our civilization to them, to those people in Africa and Asia and China, and benefit their advancement, we also find their less developed culture more close to nature and very cute and naive. Let's collect some items from Chinese culture and put it in our sitting room. So we go there to civilize them. This is our civilizing mission. For the French, it's mission civilisatrice. So thus they think, children are like the primitives. That's exactly a quote from some of these scriptures. And both of them are naive and simple, noble savages. And that was how they understood popular people, ordinary people's culture. And they like the Grimm brothers, they begin to transform their culture through massaging the content of the fairy tales and teaching them the fairy tales and so forth. There are also people who really seriously study folk culture, like Andrew Lang, who collects thousands of folk stories during his lifetime. And there are also people in this folklore society that understand people as, peasants are less civilized, the workers are like them, and the people in the colony are also like them, more primitive. So they have this idea that the savage provided the means to understand the peasant. Come on. Our peasants who come from the rural to the city to work for us, they are savages. They are barbaric. They are less than human. Cecil Sharp has something similar to say, that the common people are the unlettered whose faculties have undergone no formal training whatsoever and who have never been brought into close contact with the educated people. So their popular culture is repulsive and most insidious. They hated ordinary people's culture. They really looked down upon it as repulsive. Now, Sir Hubert Parry was also complaining, right? All these workers, after they leave the factory, what do they go to? They go to drink, they go to music hall to sing and dance, and this is roadieism. Okay? And it is not good popular culture. The people we imagine who are in the rural culture and civilization has a lot to do with how education was done in Hong Kong since we became a colony. Arnold's vision is based on a paradox. Knowledge and truth in the full sense are not attainable by the great masses of the human race. Most human beings are hopeless. But then, for whom are the cultivated, highly instructed few? Preserving culture, why are these people preserving culture? Right? Who do they preserve culture for? If the maturity is unsound and has always been and will always be unsound, so why do we need high art? Why do we need great music? Why do we need opera? Why do we need great paintings? If most human beings are hopeless. Okay. And the inevitable answer is to preserve and cultivate these arts, fine arts, for the cultural elite, the highly instructed few. And Arnold was saying all that is required from the rest of the lower classes and the colonized masses is to make them recognize our European or British culture is different and better. So you need to acknowledge British cultural difference and acknowledge cultural difference. You need to admire British culture. And Robert Young, also a post-colonial scholar, also dig out this history. And he said at that time, also the French were thinking something similar to the British colonial government. Right? Count Gobineau argued that Paris and London were marked by racial anarchy because of all these workers. As civilization has not penetrated the lower classes, which is the workers, and the lower races, the workers in the colonies, the slaves in the colonies. So the masses everywhere are lower, and thus the culture must be lower. And therefore, the culture-diffused fused culture is higher. That's high culture, fine arts. So how can the Greek culture be defined as higher? Now, that's the way to do it. Racism, class snobbery, and mass industrial revolution, mass urban education, and mass colonial education. To teach them to admire our culture and learn something useful and be obedient and tame. So Arnold would say, popular culture as mass culture is anarchy, disruptive of the fine working of the industrial and colonial institutions. Working class schools and schools in the colonies are thus outposts of civilization to tame the barbarians. The purpose of education is to dispatch literary missionaries everywhere to civilize it, and it's actually an it in his book. We're not people. And he means it, by it he means the working class or the colonized. And to civilize it for subordination, deference, and exploitation. And thus, these working class and colonial masses must admire our glorious British culture. And they decided, but what were people in Britain's university studying then? Greek, Latin, geometry, so on and so forth. The laws. These are too difficult for those people, they think. And why do we teach them these high intellectual stuff? They only need to make shoes and t-shirts for us, right? So we don't need to teach them these fine things. Let's teach them something else. And language, why teach them something so difficult as Latin and Greek that we think with? Right? We teach them ordinary English language so they can understand the English bosses. They can understand the English officials that come to rule them. Let's teach the English officials that come to rule them. Let's teach them English. How to teach them English? Teach them the easiest English. Popular literature. The English novel used to be something that the highly educated British people don't read. These are for women. These are for the working class, right? We read something more sophisticated. We don't read novels. We read poetry, the odes. Right? We do the sonnets. Right? We don't do novels. Novels are like, what we think today. Novels are you don't teach that in university, right? So, but we do teach that here. So they said, let's teach them the English novels. There's a story, characters, easy to understand. And they learn the English so that they can understand our orders. So the English novel were first taught in schools in the colonies. They were not taught in schools in England and the Britain. The students were instructed to admire them as enormously higher and better than the local culture. And that's why the Chinese people were very confused when they have read all their literature, and suddenly people in Britain tell them that their British literature are much better than COG and all that. So it's rather confusing. Now, okay, if we need to give them some British culture to admire, what to admire? F.R. Leavis is another person who is responsible for developing the colonial education syllabus. And he said, there is a myth of a golden age in British culture. Mythic past with a shared culture and corrupted from the Greek to our glorious British Empire. Although there was confusion among his believers what exactly this golden age actually existed, the Elizabethan period of Shakespeare's theatre was the most often cited candidate of what to admire, and Shakespeare was supposed to have appealed to both the masses and the cultivators. However, there's a side effect to civilizing the working class and colonial barbarians. Teaching them Shakespeare has side effects. And the Spanish philosopher actually find out how people learn to fight against the colonizers. Right? Gandhi was very well educated. He's a lawyer. Martin Lee studies a first degree in literature and then law, and he's still not fighting our government.